This is a special podcast produced for download by Aspermont Media. I'm Paul Hunt. In this feature series, we focus on Canadian oil producer Saturn Oil Gas. It recently saw production rocket 2,000% thanks to a game-changing acquisition. To tell me more, I'm joined by Kevin Smith, Vice President of Corporate Development. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
You're fairly new to the company. Why did you join?
Yes, I recently just joined Saturn right after the big Oxbow acquisition closed in June of this year. I was actually an investor in Saturn before I joined the company. And when I first learned about this small business making such a huge acquisition, I was quite compelled to find out more. So my background is in investment banking, specifically oil and gas. Since business school, I spent a decade and a half financing companies like Saturn and advising them on acquisitions. So in my experience, it's pretty rare that an oil company can increase its production by 20 times in a single deal.
Kevin, you'd already been investing in Saturn Oil before you joined the team. What was your criteria in investing in the company?
The three main factors I consider when investing in oil and gas is the assets, the people, and ultimately the valuation. So the assets that were acquired were very solid. It starts with very large oil reserves in place. Oxbow has approximately 43 million barrels of reserves, and they've been audited by reputable third-party auditors. And the production was predominantly high-quality crude oil in the world market. That kind of oil is fetching very high prices. So one of the key metrics we calculate for oil and gas companies is the reserve life index. And you calculate that by dividing the expected yearly production into the company's reserves. And it's an indication of how well the reserves can support production. For most junior conventional oil and gas companies, reserve life index is normally in the range of 7 to up to 15 years. And with pro forma the Oxbow asset, Saturn's reserve life index is approximately 20 years, meaning there's lots of reserves in place to sustain production. And there's hundreds of drilling locations to grow it. So the assets checked out very well.
And then you joined the team after investing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to speak about the team, which is the second point of criteria, is senior management. I met with them when I was investing, and a very impressive team. I mean, they're cohesive, they're a smart group of individuals, and they've been focused on Saskatchewan oil assets for most of their career, so they knew the area very well. I also talked with some existing shareholders. They spoke very highly of the management team, and they expressed their support going forward.
And the proof is certainly in the pudding, what with the Oxbow acquisition. Kevin, now that you're with Saturn Oil, how has that changed your viewpoint?
What's most exciting about working at Saturn is that I consider it a real ground floor opportunity. I mean, the company has been around for a few years and has established good operations. And it also weathered through a pretty rough 2020, and not a lot of small oil and gas companies did so. But now, with the Oxbow acquisition, it's taken Saturn to the next level. It's really a new start, and it's pretty exciting. And though there have been many new hires in the past few months, and we're growing as a team to build this enterprise here together. And this board and senior management have some ambitious goals and for our growth and debt repayment. And of course, the foundation for all of that is now set. I think we're just at the beginning where Saturn's going.
What's that like with so many new people in the office and in the field too?
Well, the team is fairly new as a larger group, but the individuals are all bringing their own experiences that they've acquired from other parts of industry. And there's some very talented people working here, and they have their own track records of success. But I think what makes it all work is that there's a pretty strong culture of teamwork, and that starts from the top, from the senior management.
My guest is Kevin Smith, Vice President of Corporate Development at Saturn Oil. Kevin, let's talk about the Oxbow acquisition. How was such a small company able to finance such a large asset acquisition?
Well, Saturn benefits from very, very strong financial partners. Of course, it starts with our lender, who put a lot of confidence in the Saturn team, stepped in with an 87 million Canadian dollar term loan and financed the acquisition. And then on the equity side, despite Saturn being such a emerging company, there's still a relatively large number of institutional money managers who support the company. Also important to note that every senior manager in the entire board of directors of Saturn also participated in the equity financing. I mean, that helps shape our culture, that management has skin in the game, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with our shareholders.
The Oxbow asset was acquired for quite a low price. How's that reflected on Saturn as a company?
Well, because the Oxbow asset was such a large part of the company, I mean, that value really falls through to the benefit of the shareholders. Just by keeping production relatively flat and growing it moderately over time, we expect the company to generate around 80 million Canadian dollars of EBITDA per year. And that's if oil stays around the mid $60 area. And then $80 million is pretty close to the current market capitalization of Saturn. So we're trading about 1x cash flow. We've only recently made this transformational acquisition, and Saturn is not a very well-known company yet, but when we hit our future growth targets, we believe that'll change over time.
Saturn's also dual listed, trades on the TSXV in Canada under the symbol SOIL, and also on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange with the ticker SMK. Why dual listing?
Saturn Oil's had some long-standing supportive shareholders in Europe. And as a small Canadian company, it may even have better awareness in Europe than North America. So European trading has been made to facilitate the shareholder base so they can trade the shares and on their own time zone. And now that Saturn has made such a large acquisition and increased its profile domestically, it's our job to increase investor awareness in North America. And that's what we're focused on in the near term.
Well, I'll follow your journey with interest. Thank you so much for joining me, Kevin Smith.
Thank you.
Kevin Smith is the Vice President of Corporate Development at Saturn Oil Gas, and you can keep up to date with all the happenings at saturnoil.com. This podcast was produced by Aspermont Media.